One of the most critical aspects of training for the 21st century warfighter is learning how to deal with attacks on convoys, especially in urban environments, where U.S. troops are frequently ambushed and roadside bombs are commonplace. Military trainers hope to turn the tables. In their simulators, with the aid of 21st century technology, troops can prepare for and learn to protect themselves against these terrorist acts. One of the latest training techniques is to use one of the younger generation's favorite pastimes, computer games. But the soldiers quickly learn that these games are deadly serious. The life of a soldier is unique. It's a tight circle, rarely breached by outsiders, and understood little by those who have not walked the walk. But now, with the help of modern technology, ordinary civilians have a chance to get an inkling of what it is like to march into harm's way. These are computer game developers who were tasked with creating a game representing the U.S. Army. That game is simply called America's Army. They have come to Camp Guernsey in Wyoming to get a better understanding of life as a warfighter.
When America's Army decided to create the new game, we went outside and tried to get some of the brightest minds in the industry to try to create a very realistic game that would be able to take the United States Army's message and present that in a very realistic first-person shooter game to the American public.
Roger that.
The designers pride themselves in particular on the authenticity of the game.
We are the first game that is the Army talking about itself. You know, we're not Hollywood talking about the Army. We're not some game company who has some idea about what the Army is. You know, we are now, the Army describing itself.
America's Army was first seen on the internet, where it quickly gained enormous popularity as downloadable software.
America's Army is extremely popular. Right now we have about 4.7 million registered users. We're adding about 100,000 users per month. And I think the reason for that popularity is, first and foremost, that our players realize that this is the real Army's depiction of itself in a video game. And that realism, that authenticity comes across in the way we construct the game and the way the game looks and feels.
My first impression was the quality of the graphics and the realism. I do a lot of shooting, and the way that the firearms were portrayed and manipulated and all the accessories was just right, spot on.
But these are no pale imitations of what warfighters endure. These games are so thorough and so authentic, they are now being used to help train 21st century warfighters themselves.
Those types of tools that they're developing for industry purposes can be applied to the next generation of training systems for the Army.
But America's Army is much more than it first appears.
America's Army is a powerful military action game technology that the Army's using for public communication about its values and the ethos of the organization, and now extending into other applications for training, mission rehearsal, and weapons modeling.
The use of America's Army as a training tool has, according to troops who have used it, been a great success.
There are several stages of the virtual training. Let's take marksmanship, for example. You can use several different training devices for marksmanship to hone your marksmanship skills. The America's Army trainer actually utilizes the soldier's weapon. A drop-in bolt kit is put in, but the zero is not changed on the soldier's weapon. He's actually firing the weapon that he will be firing on his qualification. So that's a breakthrough in virtual training.
Of course, nothing can totally match the raw adrenaline of being on the front line of an alley in Fallujah or in a darkened river wadi in eastern Afghanistan. But the ingredients and challenges are there in this digital world. So if they were to be taken seriously by the troops they were about to help train, even the best in the world of computer games needed some specialized training of their own. They had to learn the nuances and first-person experiences of life in uniform.
So we went out and hired a great team, but we needed to green up that team. We really needed to integrate them into the Army as deeply as we could.
The stakes were high not just for the inventors, but also for the future warfighters.
What is so important about what our developers are doing with the game is that they are actually impacting how soldiers will train, how they prepare for the combat role.
And that's a byproduct of great integration of our development team into the Army, the very fabric of the Army.
And we bring those developers in, and we task them to create a very realistic game, very realistic products, because we have to have realism in training. Otherwise, it's not training. And it's not going to be as effective as we want it to be.
For the majority of computer whiz kids, they're starting from scratch.
The frame of reference that a lot of these developers have is not from the military. It's from the movies. It's from what they see on TV. So that's not the message particularly that we want to send. So what we do is we do these greening up events.
Then I'll give you a little brief on what we're going to do with you today and tomorrow to help you get the Army experience. Our intent is to get you the experience you need to go back and do your jobs.
We put them into an Army environment. We try to put them in front of as many of the actual weapon systems and different platforms that they will replicate in the game, and we want them to be immersed into that experience. The only way they're going to be able to do that is by actually coming and participating in these events themselves.
Put that rifle right in the crook of your shoulder. Put that post right in the center of the target. Okay, go ahead and put it in. Okay, now you're locked and loaded.
All right, I don't need to charge.
They may be developing training and techniques for 21st century warriors, but they start with age-old commands.
And squeeze the trigger. Good.
If we're out here holding the weapons ourselves, actually firing them, feeling the recoil, getting a sense of what that means, you know, the much better chance we have of getting that right in the game.
The developers are having a great experience. They're having a lot of fun. As a matter of fact, most of the developers consider the green up events a bonus and a benefit to the job of working for the America's Army project. And I want it to be fun for them.
To make the America's Army game authentic and relevant, the developers had to learn about the biggest dangers facing real troops on the ground. Of particular concern are ambushes and improvised explosive devices, known as IEDs.
One of the tasks that the developers were really interested in getting involved in is convoy operations. We've tasked them to create a convoy simulator to simulate ambush or improvised explosive device attack on a convoy.
But the Army did not stop at the drawing board. They took them out on the road to the type of environment where it could really occur.
So today, we put the developers in a convoy. It was a 7-vehicle convoy that was actually ambushed by some opposing forces. They actually went through the ambush, they returned some fire, and were able to get out of the kill zone. They actually saw what it was like to feel helpless in that kind of scenario, and they got a lot out of it.
I'm around the experience of the Army via the game, but I'm never out in the trenches to really get a hands-on look, get to feel the weapons, fire the weapons, get an idea of what it's like just to go through the day of the Army. Yesterday was about a 16-hour day, and I think it's good for us to experience what someone in the Army goes through in that regard.
We make the game more realistic by doing these type of things because now we get to experience these things firsthand. We get to see how a weapon works, we get to see how a helicopter flies, we get to see how a convoy runs, and then we get to apply that and tweak those values, of course, considering gameplay at the same time.
These enthusiastic young inventors are exploring new frontiers. But as daring as their work is, it's only the beginning of what lies ahead.